Let's talk about retirement planning. Now, if I asked you what is the biggest cause of a failed or underutilized retirement plan, what would you say? Now, many of you might say taxes. Some of you might say it's investment management. Some of you might say that it's unforeseen medical events. And those all could be true to some degree, but I'm going to make the case in this video that it's going to be not looking at your retirement plan from a holistic and multifaceted view. I'm Forrest Dutton, financial advisor, owner of Brightworks Financial Planning, and I'm going to show you in this video how measuring twice or three times and cutting once, we've all heard that saying, applying it to construction management or home projects, but it applies just as much to retirement planning. And if done right, you can make sure you don't leave money on the table in your retirement. All right, so as I said in the introduction, this video is going to be all about viewing your retirement through a multifaceted lens. So what do I mean by that? So before I kind of get into this screen, I want to introduce you to John and Jane. Okay, John and Jane Doe, you all know them. They're going to retire. They are turning 65 in 2026. They're a little bit nervous, as most people are, about what they've been able to save and maybe how much they can live off of that. And so, really, the purpose of going through this scenario is to show you the various ways that you should be looking at this. So, I'm trying to give you some insight into what are the lenses and the angles that would make the most sense to make sure that you actually can get the most out of your retirement and get the most, especially out of those early years. And I'm going to contrast this with a couple things that you've probably already heard. If you're watching this video, that means you're probably already somewhat financially savvy, or at least you're interested in the topic. So you probably heard things like, I need to withdraw 4% of my portfolio, or I need to save 25 times my current income, whatever it is. There's lots of rules of thumb out there, and I'm going to tell you how they all fall short. That's really the purpose of this video. So let's dive in here. Let's meet John and Jane. Okay, so here are John and Jane. They've been diligent savers. John has a rollover IRA, and it is valued at $1,800,000. Jane was self-employed. She was a psychologist who worked for herself, and she was able to save 500,000 into a SEP IRA. Now, those are both in the qualified and they were put in pre-tax category, meaning that they were tax deferred. So when they retire, that money is going to be taxed. Every dollar that comes out, it's going to be taxed as ordinary income. They also have a joint brokerage account, and that is valued at 500,000. John was able to save earlier in his career, over the course of time, 200,000 in a Roth IRA. Now, we talked about already that they want to retire, but what is their actual goal? So their goal is to retire, and they want to live on approximately 14,200 a month. That would be ideal in their scenario. So this equates to roughly 170,000. Now, if you're astute and you're kind of thinking through this, you may be thinking, wait, just doing the math here, we're well over 5% if that's what they want to take. Okay. And you'd be right. But let's talk through this. Let's think about the nuances. I'm going to show you how it makes sense to start big and zoom in when you're doing retirement planning. So from a large zooming in perspective, you've probably seen or thought about, well, what is the probability of running out of money? So I think this is where a lot of retirement planning actually goes wrong, and I think it should be reframed. So if you see this number on the screen, it says 74%. And a lot of times you've probably seen other YouTube videos and they're going to say, this means that they've run 1,000 trials and 740 times out of the 1,000, you don't run out of money. So that means you have a chance on the other side that you will run out of money or that you'll outlive your money. No retiree wants to hear that. I would actually reframe this, and I want you to reframe this as a 74% chance that you will have to adjust, that you will have some adjustment to your income. Okay, so another way to frame that would be there's a 74% probability that you could actually spend at the rate that you are and you'll be fine. So it's actually the adjustment to income is the complement. So it'd say there's really a 26% chance that you would have to adjust your income in retirement. I think that's a better way to frame this because in reality, if we just think about statistics, if this said 50%, that means you have a 50% chance that you are spending right what you should, but you have a 50% chance that you're actually overspending. So this is more of a spending meter. Why do I bring that up? Because the problem is when you retire, if you were to just go for the 4% rule, that was based off a 30-year retirement. It was based off a portfolio that was 50-50. And the whole problem, the whole scenario behind that was so that you would just not run out of money. But it didn't really factor in the variability in spending that occurs at different time points. So anybody who has seen relatives live out their retirement, or maybe you've thought about your own, you are not going to spend the same amount that you spend in the second 15 years of your retirement than the first. The first, you've probably heard the analogies. It's the go-go year. So meaning you're going to travel a lot, you're going to do a lot more, you spend more. Then it's going to slowly taper down. And then when you get to the end of life, a lot of times healthcare takes precedent. So you may be spending more. Another term for this might be the retirement spending smile. So you spend more at the top, then you come down. So if you imagine a smile, I kind of do it with my finger down and up. So if you think about the retirement spending smile, that's a reality for most people. So I don't know how you feel seeing this number on the screen, but as someone who meets with a lot of pre-retirees and does retirement planning as the bulk of my practice, this number makes a lot of people nervous. And I actually do not think it should. So here's why. This is meant to be a high level run over of what your expenses, what the market might do, and figuring out what you might actually be able to spend in retirement. Now, it's good for what it is, but it's not the only thing. And really, in the intro, I said measure twice, cut once. This isn't the only thing that you should look at when you're thinking about retirement. So let's go a bit deeper. So I'm going to go a little bit one layer deeper. This is kind of our 30,000 foot view. I'm going to go a little bit deeper, and then we're going to go granular. And I'm going to show you how this actually makes a lot of sense. So let's go into the next. This is the same scenario that I have for John and Joe, and I've put it into another software that its goal is to plan your income year by year. Okay, so it has some strengths and it has some weaknesses, just like this other software is a high level retirement planning software. Are we where we want to be? Are we close to where we want to be? What are the chances that we'll have to adjust spending? So again, if it's 100% on the first software, that means there's pretty much a 0% chance you would ever have to adjust spending. And by the way, there's probably a 100% chance that you are underspending. On the other side, if we were to get a 10 or a 15% chance, there's a 90% chance that you are overspending and you cannot maintain this. By the way, there's also a 10% chance that it could work out in your favor. No one wants to see that side as well. But I would argue that you want to be somewhere in the middle to upper range when you look at that starting probability before we start to look granular, because it makes sense if we're thinking about this is a probability of adjustment, not a probability of success. Because in reality, retirement is all about adjustment. So here's what I've put in here. This is showing you what the retirement paycheck is every month. Now, keep in mind, this is giving you a net income that is lower because it's factoring in taxes. So I wanted to kind of set the stage here. If you look at this, this is actually going to give you a range. So instead of thinking, hey, I just want to withdraw 4% or 5% for the entire retirement, what this is meant to do is to sit with a financial planner year by year and figure out what are the actual guardrails. You may have actually heard that. And there's a system called Guyton's guardrails, which I think is okay, but I still think it lacks the flexibility that you need in retirement. It basically says you start with a certain withdrawal rate. Depending on what happens, you're going to either decrease that withdrawal rate or you're going to increase it. And it can lead to some pretty significant pay cuts in the course of your retirement. So instead, I think maybe a better way to think about this would be, instead of just a guardrail that is based off strictly on a small percentage decrease or increase, it's let's look at some probability. So if I look at this, I'm going to click into here, and it's basically showing us we're starting out with this total. This total is going to represent portfolio withdrawals at first. Now, John and Jane, they've decided to pull Social Security at 67. So because of that, they can start with a higher withdrawal rate. If they were to just go with the 4% rule, they would really miss out on the first few years of retirement and their ability to actually spend what they can. Now, if we look at this and let's go back to income. So what this is saying is at a current balance of 3 million, there can be a withdrawal of 14,200, which is right at their goal. And what do we actually do? I'm going to click on this. This actually gives you some guardrails. What do we do? Meaning, what will happen year by year? Will we ever need to readjust this? Well, remember that 14,002 for now, for the first couple of years, because they retire at 65, is going to be all portfolio withdrawals. But when they get to 67, it's going to be a combination of Social Security and portfolio withdrawals, which is why they can afford to take that all from the portfolio for now and maintain this level of spending. So what this is telling you is what are the levels of decrease or increase in our portfolio that would warrant a change in our actual paycheck? Okay. So I like this a lot better. And remember, the probability success meter is much more about chance of adjustment. So what you're seeing here is I've set this guardrail sort of in the middle. So if someone is more conservative, say they really don't want to ever have to adjust ever in retirement, that's what this number is over on the left. That's somebody who's they're more in the 4% camp. Hey, I'd rather underspend. I realize I'm missing out on some things, but I'd rather err on the side of having more money and giving it to my family members when I'm gone, or someone else that says, I'd rather live it up. I realize later I might have to make some drastic expenses and changes. That's somebody on the right. So that's you're starting with a much higher withdrawal rate. If you approach it this way, it becomes a lot more dynamic. It's a lot more helpful. Now, here's the downside of a plan like this. Let me go into another source to show you the details. So here's the problem with a program like this. So every program has its problems, right? So the initial software program is just, it's too broad. We don't really know what 74% means. I don't really know how to live my life month to month. This can actually give you some more granular detail in terms of what you're going to live off of and what that actually means. But if we go to, let me click into this income tab one more time. So I'm going to click into the retirement paycheck. And what I want to show you is there's an income and expense tab. And here's where these go wrong, okay? It's on the taxes. So this is not a tax software. It's not designed to be a tax software. And by the way, this video is not designed to be personal financial advice, tax advice, or investment advice. It's just to educate you, okay? But hopefully you're learning something already. But what this is showing is here's the taxes they think you'll pay. Now, here's the problem. This program is only as good as what it's designed for. It's designed to show you income and guardrails in retirement. Great. Okay, well, good news. There's more. So what we can do is take this plan, put it in a program that is specifically designed to do tax planning. And what we can see is that that tax figure, just hold that in your mind. Remember, it was roughly $14,000. But what it doesn't know is the nuances of your personal situation. So I'm going to talk through this here. So remember, we have a large IRA between John and Jane. That's reflected here. We also have a brokerage account, but how much of the brokerage is your money and how much of it is capital gains? So just to review for you, there's something called the 0% capital gains bracket. And as a financial planner, someone who wants to help my clients retire as efficiently as possible, I want to take advantage of that. So when these withdrawals are happening, they're going to be happening and the capital gains will flow through according to how the portfolio is constructed. So what I've done here is there's roughly a $28,000 withdrawal coming every year, and I'll show you that. Okay, from the joint brokerage right here, 28,000. So the question is, how much of that actually reflects as capital gains? Well, it really depends on the portfolio. So if you're someone who's a diligent saver, you've been adding every month, the chances are your basis in that portfolio has grown. So I'm assuming in this case that 375,000 of the 500,000 is John and Jane's own money. So a better way to say that is 25% of the 28 is what is actually a capital gain. So just to do easy math, that's where I got 7,000. Okay. So hopefully you're tracking with me there. The IRA distributions is 130,000. And then there's what doesn't show up here is Roth, right? So if we're doing a little bit of Roth as a distribution, then that's 11,000. Okay. So if we are actually doing that, realize that doesn't flow through to the tax return. So there we go. That's our full 14,200 on tax paper. Now, here's what's cool. This also doesn't take into fact, the other program does not take into account what's actually going on tax-wise. So they're going to pay lower in taxes because of the one big beautiful bill in 2026. This couple is 65 and older. Therefore, they're going to get an additional $12,000 standard deduction on top of the existing standard deduction, which is really generous. So they're going to get 35,500. That's a combination of the pre-existing senior deduction, the standard deduction, and then we're going to add 12,000 on top of it. Oh, by the way, the program also doesn't know that John and Jane like to give. So if they like to give, even if they don't give enough to itemize their deductions in 2026, you can still take a $2,000 above the line deduction for giving. So I added that in. We've also got the one big beautiful bill senior deduction. Their taxable income is here. And I want you to pay attention to this. By the way, I don't know what state they live in. I'm in South Carolina, so I'm going to run this as if they're in South Carolina. So their taxes are 9,275 on the federal side. That's just a projection. And then on the state side, they're 2127. Okay, so let's just remember where we started, right? We started at 14,000. So basically, this program was not accurate enough. We can get more accurate. They're actually going to have 3,000 less in taxes. And if you just think about that on a monthly basis, that's 250 more dollars. So you're asking, okay, so what? Why does that matter? Here's the reason it matters. Is because remember, we're taking money out of IRAs primarily. If we take less, if we took 250 less from the IRA, we still live on the same exact amount because taxes are factored into this. And by the way, that portfolio that portfolio withdrawal is actually a lot healthier, even though it was already healthy, right? So it's 170,000. So if we do the math on this, that is roughly 5.68%. You go, okay, that really makes me nervous for us. So, okay, let's take it down by 3,000. So what is 167,000 into that portfolio? Okay, we're at 5.5. So we're already moving the needle in the right direction. Now, is that a ton? No, but every little bit helps, right? And if we go down every layer, we can see how effective the plan can be, and this happens on a year by year basis. Now, finally, what's the third layer? Okay, so we've gone one layer down, second layer down, third layer down. I don't know about you guys. I'm a big fan of the movie Inception. This is like Inception for retirement planning. You're going levels deeper. So if you don't get that, Google Inception, the movie, then you'll get it. All right, so I digress. So moving on here to this tax planning software, then you can kind of say, okay, this couple has a lot of tax deferred assets. Should we actually think about doing Roth conversions? Now, I want to throw something out that you may or may not be hearing in other conversations about Roth conversions. First of all, I do think in some cases they can be overblown. I think you have to really, really look at all factors. And then the other thing is, what everybody forgets about is when did you defer the money, right? So for a lot of you watching this, if you've saved a good two, three, $4 million, then in that case, your income had to be to a substantial enough amount that you could put away enough money to amass that type of wealth. So if we're looking at these brackets, just hovering over them, just by color. So I'm going to kind of zoom in on the ones that matter here. So green is 22%, and then yellow is 24, and orange is 32. Now, a lot of you deferred in 24 and 32. Okay, if you're watching this. So just looking at this couple saying, okay, we want to save money, but we want to be efficient in retirement. Should we do a Roth conversion? And the point of this video is not to tell you when you should or should not, but I think it does help you to understand when did you actually defer it and when are you taking out? Because even if you take it out at 24 and you defer it at 32, you still won the game. So in this case, what I want to show you here is that before you even do a Roth conversion analysis, you probably want to think about something that's going to be a large part of your retirement, and that's qualified charitable distributions. So if we look at that at age 70 and a half, you can start making qualified charitable distributions, which means that when you do giving, it is not going to be counted to you as ordinary income. You can basically take it straight from your IRA to a charity of your choice. Now, a lot of people already give in retirement, so it's a win-win. So if we look at this, I looked at qualified charitable distributions and I just put that they wanted to give 15,000 a year. Now, if we think about what they're actually spending, that's really not going to be anywhere. It's going to be somewhere around 10% a year. This is just an assumption. We can change anything you want. But looking at that, their retirement years do not strike me as being so high on the tax burden because once they get to 70, they can start doing qualified charitable distributions that a Roth conversion is a absolute must. Now, we could run a lot of different scenarios and seeing what could work or not work, but this is really the third layer that it's not just about lifetime tax, it's actually about the month to month and year to year income. So remember, Roth conversions by nature are you deferring the money. So you were taking it out and just putting it somewhere else, but you're not actually using it. So in order to do that, you've got to pay the tax that year, which means that your monthly bill that year is higher, right? So you've got to come back here and you've got to figure out, okay, do we need to change what our actual cash flow is this year because we're doing these Roth conversions. So I just wanted to give you a framework and show you that I think a lot of times that rule of thumb planning just really isn't best. And so if you're watching this and you're curious and you're thinking, I'm going to retire and I really need help with this kind of stuff. That's exactly why I made this channel. That's exactly why I do what I do at Brightworks. So please reach out. And again, just as a full disclaimer, this video was based on a hypothetical scenario that I brought up based off my experience, but it's not meant to be personal, financial, tax, or investment advice for your specific situation. Please reach out to a financial professional, whether that's a financial planner or a tax professional. And I hope you found this video helpful. And please comment, by the way. I'd love to know what you think, what your thoughts are on this and what kind of content that you want to see. I want to keep doing this so I can educate as many people as possible and help you retire with confidence. So if you like this, please like the channel, subscribe, please comment, tell me what you think, and I will see you on the next video.